Thank them.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about that today, right? Thank them for the service, but hopefully there's a bunch of vets that might be able to chime in on the show. And I found the best thing to do is, and it's hard in today's world, right? We all got these things we hold in our hands, in our face, and all this stuff. But if you have an opportunity to take the time and actually have a conversation with a veteran, and just talk to him or her, and him or her, and thank you for the service. And I find, from my perspective, if somebody takes the time and say, "Hey, tell me about your experience,"
it goes a long way.
It goes a long way. Yeah.
It goes a long way.
It's kind of like when you take a few minutes and get to know the parking person, garage person, and you forget your wallet.
She's fantastic.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Don't you think?
She says hello to me every morning.
Every time with me too.
And every morning I say hello back to her. And when I should happen to forget my wallet, I smile a little bit, and she goes, "I got you, honey."
I got you, honey.
Literally, that's what she said.
Give the show a like and a share anywhere you guys are watching. We will rock and roll on today's show here in a matter of moments. I'm actually tweeting this out across 15 platforms. Join Keith Smith and Jerry Miller on Real
Judah.
Talk. Judah, are you on Twitter?
Yeah, I guess.
What's your handle?
I don't remember. Probably Judah Whitcower.
Okay.
I don't know.
God with a small G.
There we go. We got your microphone set up. We got the volume rocking and rolling.
Yeah, people are listening to me now.
Fantastic. I love it. We're going to have a good time today. It's Veterans Day. Have some fun. Offer some perspective on the market. Give it a like and a share anywhere you are watching. Judah, we're looking good over here. We can rock and roll when you're ready.
Quiet on the set.
Good Friday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us on how would you characterize this? Rainy?
Oh, yeah.
Is it even rainy? Is it hurricane-esque?
Well, I mean, I was on the way in. Fluvanna County had some tornado warnings posted on, as the radio goes beep, 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 beep.
There's one going up and down the eastern seaboard.
Correct. It's called Nicole.
Yeah, it's called Nicole. Good Friday morning, guys. Keith Smith over there. He's one of the principals and owner of Yes Realty Partners, the presenting partner of Real Talk with Keith Smith. Find the partners we trust on the website, realtalkwithkeithsmith.com. Judah Whitcower, you will see in the program as well. He's our esteemed, talented, and organized director of the network. Keith is a veteran. Today is Veterans Day. To the veterans that are in our lives, like Lee Elberson.
Yep.
Kevin Yancey, you're a veteran.
Yep.
Bellamy Brown, you're a veteran.
Yep.
Keith Smith, Nikki Chambliss.
Scott Morris.
Scott Morris is a veteran.
Yep.
Paul McCarter is a veteran. John Blair, your father, is a veteran. To all the veterans out there, and we would love to honor as many of them as possible. Put the branch of service you served in, and we will highlight you on the show today. It is Veterans Day, a day that is undoubtedly championed on this network. I get to sit across one that I admire 3 days a week, spend roughly 5 to 6 hours conversating with this man. I've learned quite a bit from this man.
Well, ditto, back at you.
A man I call family, inner circle. I can continue if you'd like. I think he's enjoying this very much as he sips on his $6 latte.
Really? You have to tell everybody that, really?
I thought Yona would enjoy that.
Yeah. Well, we went over our budgets. My latte purchasing for others, I think, is going to be decreased a little bit. So we shall see. But man, today's Veterans Day. If there's a vet in your life, a veteran in your life, thank them for their service. But as we were saying, and when the mics were hot before we went live with the cameras, I've found, it's like in life in general, just if you can, take a moment and chat with somebody and just get to know them and get to know what kind of impact being a veteran had on their lives. And, where they were, what their experiences were. If they feel like talking about it, this is an important thing, right? You don't want to push too hard, right? If they feel like they're comfortable talking about their experiences, some of them are really great. Some of them are not so great. But just take a time to thank them and say, thank you for your service and move on. And I have to tell you, when I went in the Marine Corps in 1980, we weren't quite there as a country. You would not, people would not stop you if you were in uniform or something like that and say thank you for your service. We were just getting over the tail end of the Vietnam War, and it wasn't really as let's say, veteran friendly as it is now, which is a great thing. But
on this Veterans Day, buy something for a veteran: a cup of coffee, a lunch,
alcohol,
some food. A beer.
Yeah.
Thank the men and women that have honored and served our country. This is brilliant from the King of Waynesboro. We may not know them all, but we damn sure owe them all.
Absolutely, yeah.
On Veterans Day.
So the King of Waynesboro, if I remember correctly, he's in the Army, but I cannot was in the Army, but I cannot remember the years he served and his job. And if he's behind the wheel, I know he's voice texts a lot of this stuff. What did you learn the most about your experience in the service that translates today, right? What have you moved? What experiences you've had, or what you learned while you were in the service that kind of translates to today and helps you get through business, life, whatever throws your way? Because we tend to look at things a little bit differently, veterans, than maybe folks that are not. So I was really curious. That's like a great conversation starter if you run into somebody on the street. So tell me what you learned. Tell me what your experiences were, and did it make you a better person? Not a better, how it helped out through your life.
Jamie Turner, good morning to you. All veterans, we want to honor you today on Veterans Day. Let us know some of the things you learned from serving our country, protecting our freedom, and allowing people like Judah and I the opportunity to do what we want in our nation. Never underestimate the value of a veteran when it comes to protecting freedoms and allowing civilians to pursue what they choose to pursue on American soil. A lot we're going to cover on the show. Yes, Keith?
And just something that makes it maybe our country a little bit different as far as service goes versus many others. It's all volunteer. It's been volunteer since the end of the Vietnam War, right? We have not had a draft. So anybody who has served since then till now, they willingly raised their hand and basically wrote a blank check to the United States government, right? So their life is that blank check on that end of it. So that's an interesting thing to focus on. For instance, I know in Austria, because I know it well because my wife is Austrian, everybody's you're required to do service. Now, so you have two choices actually. You can go into the military for like a 2-year stint right out of high school. It's a requirement, or you can go for like a service related, like some sort of like Peace Corps or something that helps the community as a whole. We don't have that in this country. Everybody who served raised their right hand up, and said, "I do." And that's there's no quitting. Once you do that, you don't say, "I don't want to do this anymore." It's a true commitment.
Kevin Yancey is letting us know what he learned from the service. I will get to that, Kevin, in a matter of moments. Before I do, Nicholas Erpy, the CMO of Emergent Financial Services, says thank you for your service, Keith.
Thank you, Nick.
Jamie Turner says thank you for your service, Keith, and to all the veterans out there, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Kevin Yancey says military bearing, never give up. There's always help to get through. There were and are people willing to give their lives for our freedom. Very well said, Kevin.
So it's interesting. I'm a Marine, so the Marine Corps is always focused on leadership, and it's beat into your head, literally, at least in 1980 it was, literally beat into your head at boot camp about the United States Marine Corps' leadership traits and their leadership principles. And anybody who's been in the service, they know we use acronyms, right? And it's called JJ Did Tie Buckle.
We know that Keith Smith loves
I
acronyms.
love acronyms, right?
Your least favorite acronym of them all is
Oh, God. Don't ask me that.
RIP,
Oh, yeah.
the Residential Infield Project.
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
that Seattle or Portland?
That would be Portland. That would be the RIP, rest in peace. I mean, so JJ did tie buckle, justice, judgment, dependability, initiative, decisiveness, tact, integrity, enthusiasm, bearing, as we just heard is very important, unselfishness, courage, knowledge, loyalty, and endurance. That's beat into your head, and if you ever been around a Marine, you always ask, why are they different? It's because we're better than everybody else, but that's besides the point.
Well, you know what I would love to hear? And
I'm only
think
kidding.
I know, we know you.
It's an inter-service thing.
You guys have some beef. Chad Wood, thank you for your service, Keith. Did
Thank
they
you.
serve stick butter or tub butter at Paris Island? Chad Wood, you are good people. Chad Wood, like you and I, has outkicked his coverage with his better half.
Yeah,
She's a pretty lady over there, Chad Wood, in that profile picture. We love when you comment on the show and get us laughing. He says thank you for your service, though.
Yeah, I could tell you during the 3.5, almost 4 months of United States Marine Corps boot camp in Paris Island, I can tell you I was not thinking of butter. Butter was not on my mind at that particular point. What was on my mind was making it through 3.5 to 4 months of United States Marine Corps boot camp. So there's 11 leadership principles. This is important. Know yourself and seek self-improvement. Be technically and tactically proficient. Know your Marines. I actually use this in business. Know your clients and look out for their best welfare or interest. Keep your Marines informed. In business, I do keep your clients or keep the folks in your inner circle informed. Set an example. Ensure the task is understood, supervised, and accomplished. Train your Marines. Train your clients or your team as a team. Make sound and timely decisions. Develop the sense of responsibility among your subordinates. Employ your command in accordance with the capabilities. Seek responsibility and take responsibility for your actions. So if you know anybody in the service, what I just rattled off, sometimes you ask, why is this person maybe taking a leadership role? And it's something that I do on a regular basis. When you're taught this, when you see a hole, you fill it, right? You just stand tall and you fill that need. You follow, you provide that leadership. It doesn't matter if you're a Lance Corporal or whatever. You fill that. You're smiling. And we back on butter.
No, Chad Wood. I said he outkicked his coverage with his wife. He goes, and I can sense the sarcasm through his comment on Facebook. It's my great looks and my money that got me my better half. And he has some laughing emojis that goes with this, Chad. We very much appreciate it.
Well, I happen to agree with him.
Chad is a good guy.
Yeah.
I want to throw this to you. And viewers and listeners, we're going to humanize, personalize, and localize the distinguished gentleman, Keith Smith.
Oh, no.
You joined the Marine Corps fresh out of high school.
Technically, no.
Whoa. I would love to get the flip book of you making the decision to join the Marine Corps, to leave your family, to make this decision that certainly has shaped your life, a decision that led you to the beautiful and talented Yona Smith, who you proudly describe as your better 7/8. You were the oldest of how many children?
5.
The oldest of 5 children. The age gap between you and your youngest sibling is?
Almost 18 years.
So when you left for the Marine Corps, your youngest sibling was?
3 months old.
3 months old.
Didn't see him again until he was 6.
Didn't see your youngest brother again until he was 6 years old.
I think I may have came home from 1 or 2 holidays, but very rarely. I was deployed.
He was behind the Iron Curtain.
I was deployed most of those years.
Okay, he proposed to his wife over the phone with a third party
It's the scary part. We've been
listening as he proposed to his wife.
That's right.
Walk us through the decision-making of joining the Marine Corps as an 18-year-old?
I was between 18 and 19. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of it is historical context, right? You have to kind of understand where the country was at the end of the 70s, where I lived in the end of the 70s. There was not a lot of opportunities for employment, right? It just was a very different world than it is right now. But I actually, somehow or another, the guy that literally did not go to school the last 2 years of high school,
Which was Keith Smith.
which would be me, I went out and worked,
At a florist shop.
at a florist shop, yeah.
Spent a lot of time together.
Yeah, that's a really good job to have with the opposite sex. So I had flowers all the time. Right, look, so I went to college. Back in those days, you could drink at the age of 18, and I did a one semester and majored in grain alcohol. And I said, you know what, I'm going nowhere fast. I was clearly not ready for college. I was mentally just not there for it. And I decided to join the Marine Corps. Actually, I decided to join the service. And this is going to sound a little flippant. And my other brothers and sisters in the other services, I love them very much so. And I've learned over the years to particularly different jobs or different areas of the service, particularly Air Force. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I decided what I thought was the best, and I was going to challenge myself, and I went in the Marine Corps, and I took an ASVAB test, in which I didn't, I scored like 100 at that time, 110. And I did not know that at the time, but that actually was officer scores. But I got selected for the duty I went on, which I did not know, because I got shoved off to boot camp. And, I went through boot camp. I was a cop by trade. I was a military policeman by trade. I went to MP school. And the whole time during those year of schooling, they were doing investigation backgrounds on me for my top secret clearance. And then all of a sudden, Master Gunnery Sergeant walked into my barracks and said, "You're leaving." And I went, "Okay, Master Guns," packed my trash, and I went off to Quantico for Marine Security Guard school, and was slid a document in front of me, signed this. I went, "Okay, Master Guns," and I signed it, which meant that I couldn't get married as long as I was on this duty, and if anybody ever grabbed me, they weren't coming to get me. And you went, "Okay," and you signed it.
No trepidation? Let's go on a two-shot there, J-Dubs.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Yeah. Look, you're 18, 19 years old. What do you know, right? And I knew I wanted to be out of the city in the 70s, right? I just knew I needed to get out of there, and this was my opportunity to do something, and I took advantage of it. When you're at a certain age, you get to reflect on certain things and look backwards. When our youngest daughter went to Radford first, because in the last 6 months of high school, she let her grades drop, and she couldn't make it into JMU, which was a school. I wrote her a letter, and you know me well enough to know, for me to write is a bit of a challenge.
Yona proofread that letter?
Actually, she didn't.
Okay.
This all came from my heart. And I wrote her a letter called The Paths. And what I learned in the Marine Corps, and this is what my father told me before I left. He said, "Whatever you do, son, do it 110%. You may not understand what's going on at that given time, but be in 110% and you will always come out ahead." And I basically wrote the letter to her that, whatever path God, Allah, karma, whatever you want to call it, puts in front of you, you walk it out at 110%. And I just fell in love with the whole ethos and mindset of the United States Marine Corps. And I say this all the time. If I didn't fall in love with Yona, I would have never got out. I would in a million years would have never got out.
How difficult was it to get out?
It was very easy because I fell in love with Yona. But it's hard, but anybody who's been in the service, you are always in the service. It's always a part of you on how you do that. I just rattled off the 11 leadership principles, right? I use these principles every day in business. The words change around a little bit, but the basic principles you always use. And actually, I was at a meeting last night, and it came up. I was at Lake Monticello. They're looking to do something with their campground over there, and I got asked to come in as a subject matter expert. And these people I know, and they all asked me, so how do you recover from $17 million of loss? And you do it with this. You just get up and you go all over again. I know I didn't cause it. And you stand tall, and you know the first one, know yourself and seek self-improvement. I know myself and I seek self-improvement. And I'm sitting here talking to you.
I love it.
It's that simple. It sounds simple, but it is that. It sounds easy, but it really is that simple.
Grayson asked this question, when did you get out of the service, Keith?
86.
Okay, and his follow-up question is, how did you know you wanted to get into real estate?
Wow, that's
Good question,
That's a great question. So
initially got into construction.
Well, I was always in real estate. 1987, I was always in real estate, right? To answer the question, anybody who's on the feed whose father or mother is a cop or a fireman, so my family was all New York City firemen, they always had second and third jobs because you just couldn't survive you couldn't feed 5 kids.
On a fireman's wage.
You just couldn't do it. We were always in the construction business. Always was. Ever since I was a kid, I was always in the construction business. So I've always swung a hammer ever since I was a kid, 5, 6 years old. That's what you did. You went to work and helped your father, and you learned the trade, and you learned skills, and that's what we did. You know what? A lot of it has to do, I have never thought about this, but a lot of it has to do with the time I spent behind the Iron Curtain in the Soviet Union and Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Romania, and under communism, where you couldn't buy your own house, right? They gave you property. You were told where you were going to live in that stuff. And I learned, talking to the people there, that their desire for home ownership and to own something is just unbelievable. That, freedom, and voting, right, was these huge 3 things. And I came over here, landed in Lake Monticello, saw an opportunity, and just took it.
Give the insight on how you found out about the Lake Monticello opportunity. If memory serves correct, it was a newspaper ad.
Newspaper ad. You know these things that people used to have? These newspapers?
The newspaper ad.
Which
was the publication?
It was Newsday.
It was Newsday.
It was Newsday. Right? Daily News and Newsday used to have that, and they had these little. This is the time where we talk about why Lake Monticello. Everybody has a funny Yankee accent.
This is a great story here, guys. A lot of people don't know this here.
So
I've heard it a few times. The viewers and listeners, they have not. This is one of my favorite things about my friend Keith Smith here is
I tell the same story.
The more time we spend together, the stories become very repetitive. But I would imagine I've now, in some ways,
I can literally just sit here and drink my coffee and shut up, and you know everything.
In some ways, I can sympathize.
Is our relationship getting stale?
I can sympathize with your 2 beautiful daughters. I would imagine that they've heard many of these stories as well. But
I add a little color.
Every time the stories are slightly different. Slightly different.
Of course. You're supposed to do that.
It's an endearing quality.
It's an endearing quality, and any service person who's listening that knows that. You got to add a little bit of truth, add a little bit
of flavor.
A little bit of flavor, a little bit of color to it on that. But, Judah, is our relationship getting stale? Is that what I'm hearing here? Do I have to spice our relationship up?
No.
That's the voice of God over there.
Voice of God. So look, I got out of the Corps in '86, married, had a 3-month-old daughter, 2-month-old daughter at that particular point in time. Again, the New York City area was not thriving. There was very limited opportunities for it, and I was very fortunate because one of the things about living behind the Iron Curtain, being on this duty that I was on, I saved a ton of money because couldn't spend it.
You couldn't spend it.
Well,
I mean, there was a couple of bars that you visited from time to time.
no,
behind
you
the
would
Iron
you would
Curtain.
have you would have to.
Were
no.
they speakeasies, if you may?
Oh no! You'd have to get on. You'd have to leave the country. There was
Okay.
no. The only bar that Westerners could visit was the bar in the Marine House. All Marine houses have a bar in it. Had a bar in it. Still have a bar in it. And our unwritten thing was this is where everybody went in the Western community because there was no place. There was no Tavola. There was no place to go to eat. There was nothing. Right.
Dan Pettit, good morning. I'll get to those comments.
Hey, Dan.
Neil Williamson, yes, I did get this high and tight haircut in honor of the veterans on Veterans Day. Keith Smith, a man I respect tremendously right here. The high and tight.
Yeah. You know,
It was not to chop off any of the grays on the side of my hair, I swear.
Oh, yeah. So
I swear that was not the reason.
are we flavoring the conversation a
The
little
high
bit?
and tight was for Veterans Day. I told the my barber, give me a fade. I wanted a little longer than normal on the sides, and he did this. But I hear the hair grows. My friend, this is what I'd like to know, and I want to keep you on headed
Point.
in the direction here.
Keep me on point. Keep me from
because
going.
I think the Newsday ad for Lake Monticello is an absolutely fascinating story. There was a gated community, Lake Monticello, that is now the largest gated community, the largest neighborhood by rooftop count in Central Virginia, with roughly 4,300 rooftops. How many total? Is it 4,300?
40, yes, roughly 43, 4,400. But
It was marketed in newspapers to Yankees in New York.
gated would be the right word to add to that because most people don't know Reston is actually an HOA.
Right.
So that would be the largest.
Neil Williamson's watching. He taught us that.
Yeah, so Reston is the largest homeowners association. I think Lake Monticello is probably the largest gated community, but I actually don't know that as a
Gated
fact.
community in the Commonwealth?
I'm going to say yes.
Wow.
But
that's a little piece of trivia. Dan
Well,
Pettit, you agree with that?
Somebody needs to Google that and make sure that I'm right. But
Is Lake Monticello the largest gated community in the Commonwealth of Virginia by rooftops? That's a hell of a trivia question right there.
yeah, and I would do it by lots, not necessarily rooftops, because there may be some subdivisions that are being built that are not built out yet that may have more. But
How many rooftops in Kings Mill and Williamsburg?
I don't think it's 4,000.
Kings Mill off Route 29 in Williamsburg. You know Kings Mill?
I know Kingsmill, but I don't think it's 4,500 lots. That just think about it. That was built started in 68, 69.
You're talking Lake Monticello
Lake
here.
Monticello. It's 3,500 acres total, plus or minus 100 acres. Can you imagine trying to put 3,500 acres together now and do a development? It just wouldn't happen.
It'd be almost impossible.
It would be impossible to go ahead and do that.
How did they put together that much aggregated acreage?
Oh, they just went out and knocked on doors. I assume. I don't really know the answer to that, but it's probably exactly the same way you do it now, right? You start knocking on doors and making offers and talking to folks and seeing if they're willing to do it. If it's not out on the open market, it's just old school knocking on doors and knowing people. I'm getting a scam likely. My phone is saying scam likely.
So the same
I answered-
developer, I wouldn't answer that phone call.
I'm not. I was
Same developer built Lake of the Woods and Lake Caroline as Lake Monticello.
correct.
Neil
But I
Williamson,
don't think Lake of the Woods is as big as Lake Monticello.
Neil Williamson just shared a link. The 4 biggest gated communities in America. He shared a link.
Which are?
You have wow. Looks like you could be up there. The 4 biggest gated communities in America.
I'd imagine like Arizona or Florida or like Florida would have the largest one, but I think in the state of Virginia, Lake Monticello, if not, is the largest. It's
He
awfully
has
close.
Hidden Hills in Los Angeles, California. Hidden Hills is a rural residential area which boasts almost 700 homes and countless horse trails. Lake Monticello has more than that. The Oaks of the Calabasas The Oaks of the Calabasas, construction in the early 2000s. The Oaks of the Calabasas has big-time houses, but I can't imagine they have, only 55 homes in the Oaks of the Calabasas. Pomander Walk,
I think another question to ask would be what in the
Lake Monticello beats these four in this link.
Yeah, if it's not, definitely in Virginia, I think it's the largest. But the other question is, what subdivision makes up almost 44% of the county? And that's what Lake Monticello does.
And folks are putting on the feed, in the initial stages of Lake Monticello, there were no lakes.
Correct. So there's a whole...
You got some smart people on the feed.
Yeah,
right
so
here.
there's a whole... So that was like in 68. So the lake itself, there's this whole fairy tale, or what's the word that you use, that there's a story that's not exactly true, but it's got some truth.
A myth? A wives' tale?
A wives' tale, a myth. That's a better choice of words. That Camille filled the lake up in one event. That's not wholly accurate. It filled it up, quite a bit of it, as Hurricane Camille in it. And there is at the bottom of the dam a bunch of construction equipment in 90 feet of water that they never were able to get out. That's they actually, it's a dive site. People dive off of it and go dive around the wrecks down there, but it didn't quite fill up in one event. But you're 100% right. It takes a very long time for something like that to feed, because it was all fed off. If you ever swam in Lake Monticello at some of the beaches and you're swimming around and you go, it's nice, it's 80 degree or 70 degree water, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you hit this cold spot, it's fed by springs. There's a lot of natural springs and stuff on the bottom of it that feed it.
So it was marketed in newspapers to New York Yankees.
Yeah. So here's the...
Not the baseball team. People like Keith.
Awesome and...
Oh, incredible people. Distinguished people, if you may.
So when I moved there was about 600 to 700 houses out of 4,500 lots. So there was a company called Cost Control Marketing out of the Poconos that came in and put options down on lots. So back in those days, you could buy lots for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. Some of them even less than that. On it, you could buy it for back dues or back taxes. It was, you could buy lots, waterfront lots for $4,000. I mean, it was pretty open. Open season on lots. So what they did is they said, I'm going to buy this lot from you, Jerry, for $5,000. I'm going to give you a $50 option, and I'm going to lock it. And then what they did is they went and marketed the Yankees, who came down there, and I happened to be one of them. I was reading the thing. I was looking to get the hell out. They pay you $150 to come down and visit, put you up. So very similar to these, road shows where they get you in there and they show you around. So if you ever drive on Lake Monticello Road from the sewer plant all the way up to the main entrance, you see a series of houses on the right. They're all now different businesses, but they were models. So they took you to there, you got in there, and the salespeople would put you in the back of their car, in the front of their car, and they had CBs. This is how they were communicating. And they made a point never to go into the main gate. They always went through the side gates, and they would wander you around, and they would say, hey, this lot's for sale for $40,000. This lot's for sale for $50,000. And you're sitting in the back, and you're from New York going, holy small ears, SH, what? On it. I better get one. And then, of course, they got people in the office. It was a whole thing. They had people in the office radioing down, take lot so-and-so, so-and-so, everything get just sold, and yada, yada, yada. So yours truly...
Sounds like a hustle.
You know what? And you would think...
Sounds like the Sting with Newman and Redford.
You would think a bunch of New Yorkers would smell a hustle before it came, but we didn't. And I bought a lot for $44,000. Leon and I bought a lot for $44,000. All the money that we saved when I was in the Corps, I bought a lot on Laguna Road, right by Beach 3. I was like, this is awesome.
Waterfront?
No. But 2-minute walk to the beach. And lived there for 13 years before I moved over to the acres. So, we said, okay, this is great. We can do this. We're young. you don't know what you don't know.
Of course.
Right?
Don't know what
And
you
we
don't
decided to open up businesses and just started working. And that's what we did. And we started building houses and helping people buy and sell and, homes that we built for them. And it's just, 35 years later, you're sitting here talking to a guy with a high and tight.
On a talk show.
And you go,
on social
how the
media.
hell did I get here?
Oh, golly. Talking to a guy in a high and tight.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. You make
Yeah,
me
yeah.
laugh.
I'm trying to, I on my Friday shows, I know I'm doing well when I can get you to laugh a couple of times. So that's laugh number one. So
My better half says the Friday shows are her favorite.
Oh yeah. So that's what happened. And you know what? I will tell you. And then of course, after we bought it and moved in, we realized we paid about $40,000 more than we should have for it. But no regrets. Knowing what I know now and going through here, no, I would not have done the same thing. I would have said thank you very much and went down the street to the local real estate agent, which you never knew was there because they never took you there, right? Because it was very, very methodically orchestrated on how it went. Ultimately, there was a class action suit against them. FCC nailed them for using CBs for business purposes.
Using what? The walkie-talkies?
CBs.
They can't do that?
No. You can't use citizen band radios they were using it as if they were mobile phones.
Okay.
So the SCC nailed them. What they ended up doing, which we did it in cash, but they also had in air quotes, their own bank and their own appraisers. Shout out to Woody Fincham, their own appraisers, and they would actually, there's no way that you can appraise a $4,000 lot for $44,000, right? But they would have these appraisers that would make the appraisals work. So not only did they sell the lots for $44,000, they really didn't want you to use cash. They said, well, why don't you finance, save the cash? He goes, no, I want to buy it in cash.
Why is that?
Because they get the financing end of it. They owned the bank. They owned everything in the chain. It was a scam. It was one hell of a scam. But here's the deal. About 800 people did it. 800 families did it. So the number of lots more than the number of potential buildings, because everybody who did it was also building. So not only did they get you on the buy of the lot, the financing, the appraisal,
Closing.
They also built the houses for people. And so I became the problem because I was stealing away their leads to build custom houses. It's literally was the best source of leads that I literally didn't have to go anywhere.
What? Because you could do it better, faster, more efficiently?
We did. They had 3 houses to pick from or something like that. I was doing strictly custom homes. So people were selling their homes in New York. This whole thing, right, of people selling in the Northeast, cashing out and coming down here has been around since the 80s. The numbers are just different now. Right, so my parents did that. They sold a house and they moved from the city to Levittown. They sold a house in Levittown, made several $100,000 on it, came down here, bought a lot, built a house, saved some money in their pocket, put some money in their pocket. Now that number's just bigger, but the process hasn't. The basic method hasn't changed.
Comments. Neil Williams had just shared the history of Lake Monticello on the feed. Dan Pettit has this for you.
That was interesting, the meeting yesterday. I was the longest resident in this meeting trying to teach the Lake Monticello board what their covenants and restrictions actually reads. But anyway.
He has this question. Keith, how did you negotiate with realtors when you were building homes at Lake Monticello when they brought buyers?
And who's asking that question?
Dan.
Yeah.
Ask about how we negotiate with buyers.
Well, that's a great question.
See, Dan knows what's up too.
Yeah, Dan is almost as old as I am. But I got a better mustache. It's interesting. We always rolled in 3% for that, but we actually didn't list them. And Dan will remember this. Basically into the 2000s. And I'll probably get myself into a little trouble here. Charlottesville agents never went out there. It was a local team of real estate agents. Very few realtors did that. Dan would be one, but by and far, a lot of Charlottesville real estate agents back in the 80s and the 90s they wouldn't go out to Charlottesville. To Lake Monticello. So there was a local agents around there. It's just like it is now. If Jerry comes in and I was building a house and the first question we ask, like, do you have a real estate agent? Great. How come the real estate agent's not sitting next to you is usually the first question I ask. And then we say, hey, tell you what, why don't we set up another appointment, get your real estate agent next to you, let's go through the process. We have a 3% commission packed into the sales price. We'd be more than happy to pay that. This is our expectations. This is from the, how this is going to work. And if we if we had direct leads, I mean, back in those days, when you had a house in framing, people would just come find you and say, hey, I want you to build me a house. It was all referral. Almost 600 of them, 400 or 500 and something.
The follow-up question, this one is a good one. It's coming from Brian. Did you catch heat from Lake Monticello as you took some of their leads? How did they respond?
So it's not Lake Monticello. See, that's the interesting thing. The lake itself had nothing to do with this. The Lake Monticello Owners Association has zero impact. They have impact on many things because they're the governing body of Lake Monticello, but they have zero sales ambitions, right? They have regulatory things like your sales signage needs to be a certain size and include a certain amount of items, that kind of thing. But this was a private company that came out of the Poconos called Cost Control Marketing and came up and put options on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lots, set up a little model row on 618 Lake Monticello Road, and that's where you went to, and you walked in there and you got a salesperson, and that salesperson took you around and sold you a lot, tried to sell you a mortgage, tried to sell you a house. And people from the Northeast that came down there,
were seduced.
Well,
romanticized. Nicholas Serpy, that's for you. He says you're a romantic at heart.
Who, me?
Smith.
Oh,
yes.
very much so. It's the reason I love opera so much.
Yancey says it was a precursor to resorts. Was it not?
Correct. So that's wow.
Dude knows what's up.
Smart people.
I know.
So that's exactly right. That was a precursor to resorts, which is a company in Charlottesville. But Lake Monticello initially was set up, and Dan, chime in if I'm going off base here.
Dan Pettit, jump in.
Was initially set up to be a vacation community. Not what it is today. And it's a history lesson, actually, right? When you start taking a look at subdivisions, they go through life cycles. They go through changes, right? This is, I don't know how many years. I'm not smart enough to figure. I'm only a Marine, so if it's over 3, I get confused. But from 68 to now, 2022, how many years is that? 40-something years? Somebody do the math on that. So it goes through different life cycles, a subdivision typically. It initially started as a vacation community. That's the reason why the minimum square footage is 900 square feet, right? The acres, which I developed, was actually an airport, supposed to be an airport. And the vision was people would fly in from Northern Virginia, play golf, go on the lake, spend their weekends, and then go back. That was the initial vision of it. And then the 70s happened, and nothing happened, right? It just stayed stagnant for a decade. And then around the 80s, early 80s, that's when this cost control marketing came in. And look, I got stung by 40 grand. But in essence, they're the ones that really re-kicked off the subdivision, really kicked off the life of Lake Monticello, because it brought all these Yankees, right?
Christopher says, how much was the lot actually worth?
$4 grand.
So it was a 36 overpay.
40. I paid $44,000 for it. It was
40K overpay.
Yeah. I could do that math pretty simple.
That was good math right there. Lee Elberson is giving you props right now. Happy Veterans Day, Chief.
Semplify Marine, and he's an awesome business owner. So a question out for him.
Oh, he's got a question for you too.
Well, a question out for him. What did he learn in the core that's helping in business right now?
Lee Elberson, you heard that question. He's got a question for you. What business?
Other than being so awesome.
What businesses in town are owned by veterans? Well, let me rattle off a few. Yes Realty Partners is co-owned by a veteran, Keith
There you
Smith.
go.
Yes Realty Partners. Claiborne.
There you go.
Claiborne Education,
Ross
co-owned by a veteran, Lee Elberson. Ross Mortgage.
Yep.
The Virginia branch, co-owned by a veteran, Scott Morris. Any other jump out to mind?
Oh, it's a great question. I don't know.
Viewers and listeners, help us out
Yeah,
with that.
please chime in because, normally what happens, it's kind of like, so I was invited to a black tie event. I'm going to answer this in a roundabout way.
Oh,
Go figure, huh? That's one of the things you learn working with the U.S. State Department for so many years. So I was invited to President Ryan's inaugural one of these things, right? They was doing. I was invited for a black tie event, so we went over there, and the person who invited me said, "Hey, I think that guy over there is from Brooklyn. You might want to go talk to him." And I went and talked to him for about an hour.
okay.
And I walked back, and he goes, "Wow, you know Dave?" And I went, "Oh, was that his name?" I never thought of asking him his name. It was, "Hey, where you from? What neighborhood you grew up? Where'd you go? Where'd you get your pizza?" We were having, like when Joe Gentile comes and visits us, we were having that kind of conversation. When two jarheads get together, when two Marines get together, that's what they talk about. Right? They don't necessarily talk about, well, what do you do for a living or what businesses do you own? We talk about the core. We talk about our experiences in the core or whatever services on that. I mean, Nikki Chambliss is a real estate agent and also, which is our own business and Air Force veteran.
Dice Hammer is another one that's been put on the feed.
So Dice Hammer is your resorts guy. Dice Hammer. Wow. There's
I know.
a name. Who put that in?
Kevin.
Yeah, wow.
He said in the mid-'70s you could buy waterfront lots at Lake Monticello for less than $1,000.
Oh, yeah. So I bought the acres from Dice Hammer, 150 acres in 1997 for, I wanted to pay $450. I paid $500 for it because Dice is a tough negotiator.
Paid $500K?
I paid $500K for 150 acres, and we translated it into 148 lots, somewhere around that, like 1 acre lots with the roads and so forth and so on in it. But yeah, here's a name I have not heard in a long time, Dice Hammer.
Give us the Dice Hammer background.
Yeah, he's just, he's
It's a great show today.
He's a character.
We didn't have this plan. And
There was zero plan. You know who Dice Hammer's a lot like? Doc. So, he just...
Doc who?
Virginia Land, Doc Hurt.
Okay.
Dr. Hurt, sorry. Dr. Hurt. I'm starting my
Dr.
brain.
Charles Hurt.
Charles Hurt, yeah. He's a lot like that, very old school. You got to sit down and have a conversation about everything other than what you're about to talk about, but you're really talking about what you're talking about, if that makes any sense, right? Have you been
There's
in
the second laugh.
Have you been through one of those conversations? Right? You're talking about something other. I had a meeting with Dr. Hurt a couple of weeks ago. I got a client trying to buy some land from him. We were talking
How's
about.
Dr. Hurt doing?
You know what? 95 years old and still at his desk, man. God bless
Love
him.
it.
God
Beautiful.
bless him. So we're talking about everything but the property and the price. We're talking about he's former service, talking about his experiences in World War II, talking about my experiences when I was behind the Iron Curtain. We end up had an interconnection because my cabinet company, when I owned it, did all his work. We were talking about that, and literally at the end of it, we go, "Well, how much you want to pay?" And I said, "Well, this is how much you want to pay." And he goes, "Okay, I'll get back to you." And literally, I just got a text from him. This made me think of it. A couple of minutes for me to call him on it. But we talked about everything other than the deal. But we were really talking about the deal because it was all about getting to know one another again and getting to trust everybody. And he operates on a handshake, and so does Dice Hammer. on a handshake, and you shook a hand, and that was it. You were done. Maybe ended up something on the back of a napkin. You've been through that
I
drill.
have been through that with Zanice at Jack and Jill's.
Yeah.
Dice's claim is Massanutten and the early Wintergreen condos. Dice Hammer.
He also bailed out Spring Creek too.
Dice Hammer did.
Yeah, he's out of it now, but he went in after the time of great unpleasantness and took over that project. He's out now. I think he sold it. Can't remember. I think he sold the remaining parcels he had to different folks. I'm not up to speed 100% on that, but I know he came in when the time of great unpleasantness was coming along.
More comments coming in. Ask Keith about Jared Lake.
Oh, good Lord.
Then we got a case study coming up for you.
No, Jared Lake.
You got to set the stage. I don't know Jared Lake.
So Jared Lake, the owner of Raintree Homes. So back in the 80s, you had two big builders at Lake Monticello. You had Cost Control Marketing. You had Jared Lake.
You're doing a good job today.
Why not? Yeah, I just haven't thought about this stuff in a long time. You know what I'm thinking? Shucks. I've been around a while. Holy schmoly.
35 years in real estate.
Yeah, I know. I don't mean that to brag or nothing. It's just like dawned on me. These are names and people that, I haven't thought about in a while. I do talk to Jared regularly. So he owned a company called Raintree Homes. So when I got out of the Corps, paid my $44,000, came down here, most people, when we were young, we were just doing whatever we could do. So I was framing houses for Jared Lake with a crew. I was putting roofs on his houses for Jared Lake. Plus, I was building my own houses for customers. So I would frame his homes for him and put roofs on it. Well, I'd frame his homes during the day, right? Weekends and stuff like that, I put the roofs on, but I also on the weekends would frame houses for my clients. And we you just hustled. You did whatever you needed to do, and we were just doing all that stuff. But I have a Jared Lake story, and I have to temper it for small ears.
Okay.
So he bought a piece of property, and how we ended up. Actually, we've helped all his family buy and sell houses. We've helped him buy and sell houses. He calls me every once in a while and goes, "So what do you think the market's going on?" I said, "Just watch Real Talk, Jared." "Oh, I don't know how to do that internet crap." And I said, "Okay, Jared, let's get a cup of coffee and we'll talk." So he bought a house in the 1980s on Old Garth Road, and it needed a roof on it. So our company was me, my father, my two brothers, and a couple other people that we hired that was on our team. He goes, "Look, I need you to rip this roof off and put a new." Is it a boring story?
No.
No. I needed to rip this roof off and put a new roof on. Okay. This is how much it's going to cost. Okay. How many days? 3 days. Day to rip off. Half a day to prep. Day and a half to put it on. And this was like in August, so it was hot. We took that roof off and put it on in 2 days. We saved ourselves a day. Job is done, because back in the day when you finished a job, I handed you a bill, you handed me a check. So I handed him a bill, and he handed me a check for 2/3 of the original price. Because obviously I paid you too much. I went, "Excuse me?" Because obviously I paid you too much. And I looked at him, and I can't tell you the words that I used. I tore the check up, and I threw it in his face. I told him certain words, turned around, walked away. And as I turned around, he tapped me on my shoulder and gave me the check for the full amount. He says, "Good job, kid." Right? He was
Dan says he remembers you doing this.
Yeah.
He was trying to test you.
That's exactly what he was doing. And after that, he was from Jersey, so
So he had 2 checks on him.
yeah, 2 checks on
I
him.
wanted to see if he would take the 2/3
Yeah,
one.
yeah. God bless him. Good for him. Right? If I would,
I don't do business that way.
yeah. Well, he was from Jersey, so there you go. But
Because he saw that you did the work faster.
yeah, I saved a day. So obviously, I'm paying you too much money because he supplied the the product, right? He supplied the roofing, he supplied all that stuff, so we were just supplying the labor, which was removing and putting it back on. So I tore it up, threw it up in his face, turned around, and I got a tap on my shoulder, and good job, kid, and hand me the check. And after that, any roof I've done for him, any work I ever did for him was never questioned. I just got a check. Matter of fact, he would pay me before I was done.
This question's come in the feed. You're on point today. The
It's
coffee.
it's the coffee.
It's the coffee. How are we doing?
I
this
put
again?
butter in it.
He put butter in the coffee.
Well, you know, I've been thinking about
A
that.
stick or a tub?
Oh, the voice of
Look at you.
the voice
Look
of
at you.
God over there.
Look at you.
Can we go on the 3-shot?
Sure.
And welcome Judah Wickhauer to the program. There's
Hello?
Judah. Hello.
Yeah.
Our North Star. We love Judah
Talk
Wickhauer.
about a head of hair, huh?
It's going. It looks good.
Well-
I very much like the look.
It's still soaked from this morning.
I mean, you pretty much are getting to the point of ponytail.
Yeah, I can do one now.
I sincerely mean this, Judah. I think it looks very oh, he does have a ponytail.
I can't.
I think it looks fantastic.
Can't
So we got a
get
case
in
study
there
coming up. We're
Ooh.
going to get to here.
Do I need a red pen or a blue pen?
Oh, this is just an informative case study.
Okay.
People want to hear the story of Spring Creek, which is another gated community, and how it was very close to an epic crisis during the time of great unpleasantness.
Sure. Chuck Kincannon was the guy that originally did it.
You're crushing it today.
These are just names that.
Jamie Turner, stories from Mr. Smith's development days need to be a regular segment of Friday's show. This is great. And he also says this is better than butter. It's better than butter.
So if somebody on the feed will pay for my therapy, I'll be more than happy to talk.
I am very much enjoying the development stories as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
I find them fascinating. How
Well-
about Spring Creek almost at default?
Well, it's everybody was at that point. I was there with Nahor and 3 other subdivisions, right? You know, you know, the time of great unpleasantness was the time of great unpleasantness, and it was extremely difficult for everybody involved in it. And you know, I'm holding in my hands the leadership traits and principles. That's the stuff that gets you through that. And plus the love of an awesome woman and family, and knowing that you did the right. You didn't take a bunch of money and go gamble it, right? It is what it is. It happened. So Chuck, God, I knew Chuck because we used to own property down in Cape Charles before the time of Great Unpleasant, and our house was right next to Chuck's house in Cape Charles, and we used to fish together, right? I had my boat, he had his boat, and we'd go fishing together. Then all of a sudden, both of us didn't have a house in Cape Charles anymore and didn't have a boat anymore. Something about owing money to banks and stuff. That's what happens. But yeah, so so he held on to it for a while, and you get into this mindset. Somebody asked me the other day, what was the biggest mistake that you made during the time of great unpleasantness? Was it doing the projects? Was it division? Was it whatever? And it was none of those things. And when I drive past Nahor Village and see the beautiful oak tree I saved and the maples on it, I'm happy. It's just a beautiful feeling to see that happen. The one mistake I made was I thought I could fix it. I literally thought I could fix the national housing depression we were in. And then part of that is I believe the banks. Yeah, you know, as long as you're paying your $86,000 a month, and oh, by the way, interest rates just went up, so now it's $125,000 a month. Oh, by the way, interest rates went up again, now it's $150,000 a month. And as long as you keep on paying that, we're going to figure out a workout plan. Okay, I took you for your word. Ran out of cash, and they said, well, Mr. Smith, we're not going to work with you any longer. And then that's the story where I said, have you ever read the covenants and restrictions in Nahor Village? Did I ever tell you that story?
No.
So we ran out of cash, and I'll leave names of lenders out of it to protect the not so innocent.
Even though you could throw shade if you wanted to. And
Yeah.
they probably deserve the shade, but
Yeah,
you have too
no,
much honor
no.
to throw the shade.
Yeah, that's not who I am.
Okay.
So if you have anybody, God forbid, anybody ever has to go through this, when it starts happening, you actually are paying for everybody's legal fees. So I'm paying for the bank's legal fees, I'm paying for my legal fees, right? This just becomes this big, brutal thing. So we're out of cash. They go from, hey, we're going to work with you, to, hey, we're going to cut your legs out from underneath you, we're going to bankrupt you, we're going to put you, I mean, they get very aggressive to the point where they would actually go find my children in school to issue warrants in debt because they couldn't find me. But anyway, so I get a phone call. You will show up in Northern Virginia, in Tyson Corner, at the law office. Okay, put on my suit and tie. I go up there, and I'm sitting at this table, and, you know, there's lawyers from Princeton and Harvard and all this stuff around the table that I'm paying for on this stuff, and they start reading me the Riot Act, and you need to pay $17 million, and yada, 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 or whatever the amount was at the time. It was maybe $4 or $5 million at that point, because I paid down a lot of it with cash and stuff like that. I said, well, you know, gentlemen, I'm tapped out. You know, so we've got to come up with another solution. Well, we're going to do this. You need. And then I said, have any of you gentlemen read the covenants and restrictions for Nahor? And they went, well, we're lawyers. We know what's in there. I said, have you read them? Yeah. I said, so I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to get up and leave. And I'm going to go home. I really suggest you read the covenants and restrictions. Okay. Didn't even get on 66. My phone rings again. Mr. Smith, can you come back? Can we buy you dinner? I went, you read the covenants and restrictions. So I always write in my covenants and restrictions, used to write in my covenants and restrictions, until the last residential home is CO'd. I personally am in control of the Architectural Review Board. So I personally get to either approve or reject a set of plans. Well, Mr. Smith, we need to figure something out. I said, so what's your idea? I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to see what they wanted to do. Oh, you know, we got to come around. I said, I'll tell you what, gentlemen, let's stop wasting everybody's time. I paid you all I got. I don't have any cash. Let's do this. We'll do a deed in lieu and foreclosure. I'll sign over all my rights over to you. You agree not to sue me for deficiency, which means I won't file bankruptcy on that end of it, and we'll call it an effing day. And oh, by the way, go F yourself. And I got up and walked out, and that's what we ended up doing. But they've, you know, belittled me because I didn't have a degree. Maybe they didn't like Marines because I always wear my Marine Corps emblem on my lapel of my jackets, my suits, and that's I've never told you that story.
No?
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's maybe my favorite one.
Yeah. I should have done that
in the beginning.
A long time. That's the thing. I thought I could fix this. I thought I could work with them. I probably should have did that before, and I would have been about $4 million richer. But it's only money. I always can make more money. Can't make more time, though. Lost a lot of time.
Keith Smith, A-plus people. You see what this man's about?
I have not told that story in a long time.
That's a great story. That's a damn good story.
Anybody watching, listening?
Yeah, they love it.
Well, you know, it's, you know.
Why'd you get emotional there?
Yeah, you know, that's a tough, this was tough on my family, right? You know, impacted my mother, my father, my children, other people, our subcontractors that we worked with that were like family to us. Part of all that cash we had built up over the years went to make sure they got paid. I made sure all the subcontractors got paid. The banks, they can go whatever. Because, you know, it was amazing how the story went from we're partners until you were out of cash to we're gonna, you know, they made the mistake of telling a Marine that they were gonna push me up against the wall, and that was really a bad move. So I pushed back. There you go. Haven't told that in forever.
Good story, Keith. A case study maybe we save for Monday. Nicholas says he loves that story. Multiple people saying they love the story. I love that story as well. I think it's an indication of who you are, microcosm of who you are. Case study for Monday, potentially.
Yeah.
An investor, soon-to-be investor, someone that has the resources to potentially be an investor is considering a pursuit of Section 8 homes
Okay.
as an investment.
Okay?
And wanted your take on should Section 8 homes be a target for a portfolio
The short answer is yes.
for investing?
It's a pretty simple yes.
And the thinking from this potential investor, new to the game investor, but with financial resources,
Got it?
is the guarantee of the rent payment
That's
from
exactly
the
right.
government.
So the trick to that is, so do we have time?
We can do that, or it could be a great case study for Monday if you want.
It's actually pretty short.
Okay.
I mean, the trick is what you buy, right? So Section 8 isn't the product, right? Isn't the home. It's how you get paid, right? So you've got, and my only advice is if you're going to buy a home and do a Section 8 rental, make sure the portion of the money of the Section 8 they're getting paid covers, if you're financing anyway, covers, if not all, but very close to the full amount of your debt.
Debt service.
Debt service. Because the only guarantee is the government side, right? Because it's sometimes there's two parts to a Section 8, right? Sometimes there's the Section 8 dollars, and sometimes the tenant pays somewhat of a difference on it. But for the most part, it's Section 8 dollars that pay it. You just be super careful that whatever amount of money you make covers all your expenses, and then you'll be good to go. It's a great, it's double-edged. You help somebody, right? And it's guaranteed payment.
Challenges of the Section 8 portfolio for the investor. I have a client that does this, also my mentor. I mean, you're in a lot of ways a mentor.
Thank you.
Bill Nitchman.
Mutual, by the way.
Thank you.
Different
Different kinds, different
topics.
yeah, different ways of mentoring.
Yeah, sure.
Bill Nitchman, who still very much a Charlottesville and Albemarle County heavy hitter. I shared a wall in his building with Bill for almost 2 years. We were at the Professional Center, Judah, this company on the downtown mall. It was a pest for Bill, always knocking on his door every day asking.
I've heard this Jerry Miller story before.
Right. He has some Section 8 or had some Section 8.
Yeah.
One of the challenges of the Section 8 portfolio is the upkeep of the property.
It shouldn't be.
It should not be, but it ends up being.
Correct. Yeah, because there's very.
You want to put that in perspective?
Well,
You navigate that dance?
yeah, there's very specific requirements from the federal government on the structure. They're not really that overburdensome. What's that word I'm trying?
Burdensome?
Thank you. Burdensome, difficult to achieve. So it shouldn't be that difficult.
Oftentimes, the property from my client and from his perspective, two different people, was often left when the lease was done, not in great condition.
So that's the struggle right there.
And then the security deposit, or if there even was one,
Yeah.
never covered
Yeah.
the
So that's
damage to the property.
So that's the point I'm trying to make. Look, but that's indicative. I like that word, huh?
There you go.
That one hurt. That's indicative of any rental property, right? You run the risk of that. That's why Ally Property Management, which I'm going out for dinner with Suzanne Real tonight, Yona and I, to Vivaci's. That's the reason our one little rental that we have, we use that. But, at one point in time, I had 14 at Lake Monticello, and I got very fortunate and sold them before the time of great unpleasantness started, because it got to the point of changeover was getting super expensive. Now, the rents were not what they are today, right? But changeover was expensive. You almost had to paint it every time you changed it over 1 year or 2 years lifespan of a tenant. So you just got to make sure you've got packed in enough in your ROI to cover it, then it's a good thing. Plus,
Very nice.
plus you're building an asset.
Build an asset, and the best part of the Section 8 property in your portfolio is the guaranteed rent. How many
Almost-
Section 8 houses are in Charlottesville or Albemarle County?
I wouldn't know that answer.
That one's come on the feed.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that.
And then this question's come on the feed.
somebody-
Does Lake Monticello have restrictions on Section 8? And are there a lot of HOAs that do not let Section 8 in their HOAs?
Wow. I can tell you Lake Monticello does have Section 8 in it, but I'm 99% sure you can't, I don't think they're allowed to say no to that. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm 99% sure. I don't think an HOA can say no to Section 8. Section 8 is just how the money's getting paid, how the rent's getting paid. So if it was not allowed, then they could say, well, Mr. Miller, you're renting a house from Mr. Smith, and Judah's paying you to pay me, and that's not allowed.
There's also price point thresholds, though, that would keep
Yeah.
Section 8 from happening.
Correct. So that's a different story. That's a different conversation, right?
We should explain that.
Yes. Well, there's only
There's not going to be a Section 8 house at the $4,000 or $5,000 a month price point.
Well, let's put it a different way. There's not going to be a Section 8 house that a home is worth $500,000.
Say that again?
So if there's a house that's worth $500,000, that's more than likely not going to be a Section 8.
Okay.
So you're saying it a little bit differently. You're doing it on a monthly thing. I'm talking about the value. So normally, if the gentleman or person who's wants to do the Section 8, there's a certain very narrow price point that
Affordability.
he or she can afford in order for the math to work.
Exactly.
So as a house gets more expensive, the likelihood of Section 8. So for instance, Farmington doesn't have Section 8s in it, right? Lake Monticello will, because there's some homes that are at that price point that would work. But I'm almost 100% sure.
Neil Williamson, federal regulations prohibit tenant restrictions.
Thank you.
Fair housing.
Thank you. Well, I knew it was a fair housing thing. I'm up to speed on the fair housing on the sales end of it. The rental end of it, I'm not 100% up to
I
speed.
would love, and multiple people are asking, how many Section 8 housing opportunities or individual units are in Charlottesville, Albemarle County, or Central Virginia?
So it's not a house, it's the occupant,
Right.
right? It's not, this is a Section 8 house and this is whatever. It's just how the occupant is paying for the rent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is a doctor, this is Section 8. It's just how they're paid. There isn't, this isn't like, in New York City, you would have, back in the 60s, they did these sections of public housing, right? This is not what this is. This is you renting a house, it's $1,000 a month, and I get a chit, or I get a voucher for $1,000 from the government, and as Neil said, you actually, to his point, there is a fair housing source of funds.
Our Deep Throat has a comment. The I Love Seville Network's Deep Throat. I actually met our Deep Throat the other day. 1,500 households in the city are on HUD programs.
There you go.
1,500 households in the city are on HUD
Out of-
programs.
out of 50.
Not all of that is HCVs, though.
Yeah.
HCVs?
I believe that's Section 8. So that's defined. There's some sort of,
1,500, that's knowledge right there.
yeah.
Thank you
out
for
of
this.
out of how many houses in Charlotte, rooftops are in Charlotte?
Out of how many total? I think Anonymous on Twitter is going to have that answer.
Yeah, so-
Anonymous, out of how many total rooftops? So Anonymous is saying 1,500 households in the city are on HUD programs.
Yeah. Well, we have to define what
Ooh,
HUD.
I got more comments coming
So
in
it
from Anonymous
depends.
here.
It depends what a HUD program, because HUD does loans too, right? So specifically, are we talking about Section 8 or any HUD programs? Because there's lending programs that's available through HUD.
Yancey says, this is based on demand from population. Landlords just have to decide if they'll accept Section 8 vouchers. HCV, Neil Williamson on Facebook is responding to Anonymous on Twitter. Neil Williamson, housing choice vouchers is
Yeah.
HCV.
Yeah. So some people.
Oh, Anonymous just put that in, housing choice vouchers.
Yeah. So some people can call that Section 8, but they're vouchers you get from the government. Actually, you know where that information is probably easily housed, and me as the me as the treasurer, I probably should know this, but the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, probably we can get our fingers on that pretty easily through that. Just make a couple of phone calls and know what we're talking about. But look, it's housing choice vouchers. I don't know if we're calling them Section 8s or not, but you get a voucher. And as I said earlier, to Neil's point, source of funds is a protected class. So you can't reject something for source of funds. Now, if you make the rent so high and people are willing to pay, that kind of is a way you kind of get around that.
Right. I think that's being done.
Of course it is, yeah. Because you can get it, right? And actually, I just want to do a shout out. Our week over week right now is actually.
Today's show was excellent, by the way.
Thank you. Flipped. We've got 82 in the last 7 days came on the market, and 68 went pending. Remember, on Wednesday and Monday, it was the opposite.
Inventory.
So inventory all of a sudden shot up in the last 24 hours.
What do you attribute that to? A push before
I
the
think-
holidays?
I think it's Friday has a lot to do with that, right? You know, people are putting homes on the market back to the traditional, putting homes on the market on Fridays, right, for the weekend kind of thing. But we're up by 20, not quite 20, but 20 units this week, new coming on versus pending. Pending's a low though, 68. Great show today.
Dude, excellent.
Yeah, I love it when we don't have anything planned.
Fridays, man.
I love Fridays.
This comment's come in on multiple pages here. Perhaps a show allocated for HCV's Section 8 housing and the opportunities presented.
So we'll have to, I do not claim to be, even though I stayed in Holiday Inn, claim to be an expert.
Who would that be?
Neil would be one for sure.
Neil Williamson?
Neil would be one, and I'd probably reach out to somebody at the Planning District Commission. Ian Baxter comes to mind, but I would have to ask the executive director permission first. But,
Ian Baxter is whom?
Yeah, he's a staff over there, and he kind of runs all the housing stuff. He's the one that works closely with me and Ned Galloway on the Regional Housing Partnership. So that would be good. And probably Suzanne would be a good...
Real?
Yeah, it would be a good source. So we'll think a little bit about that. I think that's a good conversation. That feels more like a Monday show than a Friday show because we want to obviously talk about butter on Friday. But, you know, it's going to be hard to turn that show into a ton of fun. It'll be informational, though.
Yeah, I think that's what folks are asking. The Woody Fincham and Associates, one of the best appraisers.
Woody would actually be a good source for that, too.
Woody Fincham has got a comment here. He said we should turn shows like this into fireside chats with Keith Smith. Give the man a smoker's jacket, a pipe, bourbon in a cup, and a fire background. Roger Voisinay, this should resonate with you. Are you ready for this one?
Roger's a rock star, man.
He says, this was absolutely one of the best shows in a very, very long time.
Oh, thank you, Roger. When was the last time you watched a show, though?
He watches them often.
I'm just kidding.
One of the very best ones in a very, very long time.
Yeah. Thank you, Roger.
From Roger to say that goes a long way.
Yeah, for him to take time out of being his awesomeness to plug that in, I appreciate that. Thank
Multiple
you.
people
Thank you,
are
Roger.
saying today's show with Keith telling stories from development and real estate is absolutely fascinating and should be highlighted. So maybe you start highlighting some stories that should be out there. I'm getting a lot of comments on the HCVs in Section 8 as well.
I wanted to get to some of my Marine Corps stories when I was behind the Iron Curtain. We'll save that for another show one day. Some fun stuff that we used to do.
What do you have planned for Monday, my friend?
You know what? I think it's just you and I on Monday.
love it.
I do not have a guest. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I'm going up to the Virginia Governor's Housing Conference, and I may or may not be on the show, depending on. I've got an email yesterday that I may have to do some speaking up there, but I don't know when. So we shall see.
We have
Scott Morris will be on Wednesday for sure.
Our second son is nearing his first
Yeah.
birth.
So I'm mentally prepared.
So I pass this on to the viewers and listeners, also to Keith Smith and Judah. You may see me have to say,
Bye.
time to go.
Bye.
We are now less than 13 days away
So how do you
from
feel?
the,
How do you feel about that,
the
Dad?
due date. I feel good. I think the moms that are watching this program can appreciate that when you're in the home stretch,
Oh, yeah.
that you're very eager to have the baby born.
I got it.
Because it creates a lot of uncomfortability,
Oh.
sleepless nights.
Can't eat.
Can't eat.
Gotta
a lot
go to
of
the bathroom
doctor's
every 2
visits,
seconds.
A lot of going to the bathroom. That is literally what's happening.
Yeah, every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And-
So
And
not
your
to
wife's
speak,
doing that too.
not to speak for my wife, because I try not to do that. I think she's eager to have our son born.
Yeah.
So we're less than 13 days.
So it'll be almost 4 years difference. How many years?
Almost 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Train's almost 5.
Our oldest is 5 in March. So what is that? That would be
You know
4
something?
years and 8 months.
You know what? We're entering our 4th year. Hold it. Are we in our 4th year already? Are we in our 4th year?
You keep track.
Yeah.
The 400th episode is early December.
Yeah.
My hope, what is it, December 2nd?
December 2nd.
Okay,
yeah.
that'll give me enough time, my fingers crossed, between the birth of our second son and to celebrate this monumental anniversary of 400 episodes.
So Yona said to me on the way in, she said, "What do you do when Jerry's not going to be around?" I go, "I don't know."
Well, you're talking because
Yeah, you'll be
of our
busy.
second, yeah.
You'll be busy.
Yeah.
As
I will
rightly-
take
as-
some time
as-
off.
As I hope you do.
Yeah, we'll take
I
some
would be very disappointed if you did.
knowing you and how important family is to you, I don't think you would be
I would be.
disappointed with
I would
me
be
if
very disappointed.
Yeah.
God and Keith will get it covered.
Yeah, that would be Judah over here,
Well,
God.
but we've got some great folks, and we'll reach out to folks, and we'll just have a conversation.
There we go.
It's amazing. I was thinking about this on my bike ride yesterday, on how this thing just kind of morphed into what it is. It's not what we thought, at least from my end of it, 4 years ago. But what I was thinking was, when we started this, your son was a toddler. Now he's in high school. Oh, high school. Now he's,
Approaching kindergarten age.
well, he's probably ready to go to high school, as smart as he is.
When-
but
oh,
yeah,
man.
getting ready to go to kindergarten. Well, I'm excited for you, man.
Thank you very much. Today's show was dynamite.
Yeah. Thank a vet, please. If you bump into a vet, buy him a coffee or her a coffee. But more importantly, try to talk to them. Whatever comes to mind, just have a conversation. It'd be amazing what you might hear.
Keith Smith, guys, you see what he's all about? Yes, Realty Partners support the companies where the people that own them are of character and honesty and hard work. A man who served the country, Keith Smith. Yes, Realty Partners. This is Real Talk with Keith Smith. All the shows are archived online at realtalkwithkeithsmith.com. Judah Wickauer is our enterprising director, the man behind the camera. We've dubbed him J-Dubs. I know, I saw that.
Sorry about that.
No problem. My name is Jerry Miller. The I Love CVille show is up in roughly 45 minutes. Happy Veterans Day, everyone. We'll
Look
see
at that.
you very soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Nicely done.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize that we were already at 11:40.
Having fun.
Yeah, man.
Show
Thank
was
you.
dynamite.
Thank you.
Absolutely dynamite.